Hi everybody, this is Leo Ropes and welcome back to another edition of Let's Play with Leo Ropes. Once again here with another video of me playing Resident Evil 4, a game I picked because this is October and Halloween's coming up. And just like in a boy becoming a man, coming of age and experiencing Halloween, this is about the time when Resident Evil 4 stopped, or the Resident Evil franchise stopped being scary and became more about action and excitement and less about, the monsters and the jump scares and the actual creepiness. I mean, some of it's there, but uh, and sometimes it gets pretty close to the creepiness factor of the older games, but it, you know, it never really reaches that point. In other words, back in the old PlayStation days, the original Resident Evil games, there were times when you completely uh, felt completely, what's the word I'm looking for? Helpless. You're like, shit, I'm running out of ammo. There's a shit ton of enemies surrounding me. Oh man, I'm about to die. I haven't saved in God knows how long.
Got a selection of
So, and this is the entry in which they introduced the save system. You still saved on a typewriter, but now you've got unlimited saves. Whereas before you would get a certain limit. If you had the ink rolls for your typewriter, if you had three, you could only save three times. And here, you have basically unlimited, so you just go back to the last time you saved, because you could save as many times as you want. And that kind of took a little bit of the tension away. That is kind of creepy. Oh, there you go. Go ahead and die. Um, and then the other thing is, this game, going back to the times when I used to watch G4 Tech TV, I remember they were interviewing some random guy at like an E3, and I think they asked somebody, what would be the one thing that you would want from a new Resident Evil game? And I remember a lot of people requested, like, oh man, I wish I had more ammo. And ask and you shall receive. This game has a shit ton of ammo. I mean, even right now, I'm playing it on the New Game Plus. So of course, I have a ton of ammo left over from my previous playthrough. But even if you play it starting off fresh, and I hardly ever, found myself without any, um, or found myself wanting for ammo. You know, I, and I think the game kind of sort of calculates that. Like if you're running low on if you're running low on handgun ammo, all of a sudden you kill a villager, all of a sudden you have handgun ammo. Shoot, how do I do this puzzle? I think you go three times here, and then okay, this is one of those puzzles that always kind of confused me. Okay, and then okay, three, and then three again. There we go. And this was another change that the Resident Evil franchise went through during this time. Was before, I'm sure you noticed the merchant that I passed through a couple times already, where he sells you weapons and he sells you ammo upgrades and first aid sprays. That was something that was a first for the Resident Evil series. Usually the only way you could get any kind of weapons or any kind of ammo or anything like that was, um, you had to find it. You couldn't just go out and go to a merchant guy and buy it from him. And and the way that you gain money, or in this case pesetas, to buy the stuff off of him, like you obviously break a box, you find it, or you could get some of these treasures. You find some of these, like in this case, in this case, this beer stain. There's, you'll see that there's three recessions. It's missing three pieces, and so far I've found two of them. So you combine it in there. So now instead of it being worth $10,000 if you sell it without anything, now I think this beer stain is worth maybe 25,000. And if I find the last piece and combine it in there, then it'll be worth 30,000 or whatever, and the merchant will, be, oh, stranger, I'll buy that at a high price. That's the thing about the stranger, the merchant guy. He's extremely quotable. Next time I won't skip his cutscene. I'll just let him talk, so you can hear him talk, just in case you're one of the 3 or 4 people who have never played this fucking game. Because if you've never played this game before, then either you were born yesterday, or I don't know, Resident Evil, like me, just never interested you. You still, like in the previous Resident Evils, you always got exposition through notes that people left behind. That doesn't change here. You still find notes lying around that you can pick up, and oh shit, and snakes. Ah, why did it have to be snakes? I don't, this was kind of strange. This was never explained anywhere. Like random snakes will appear and attack you for no reason. Whatever. But in this part of the game, the game is basically broken up into 3 parts. Right now, we're at the village area, and then the second part takes place in this big giant, castle. And then the the third area, I think, is like an island with a bunch of mercenaries on it. But um, oh man, I missed one of those birds. I should have shot him. Come on, you see all those pesetas that you pin. Like, you can use those for upgrades or anything, like, from the merchant. Where was I going with this? Um, right. So the first area, I think, is probably the creepiest. It kind of transitions as you go along. You start off here, in the village area. This area is by far the scariest part of the game. Once you break through this area, um, it gets significantly easier, or not easier, but significantly less scary. Because once you get into the castle area, it still has its moments where it's really, really creepy. Um, Maybe 3 or 4 places where you're just, it gets really, really tense. And then when you get to the third area, the mercenaries, it kind of transitions into more like, Resident Evil 5, or like it's almost full on action the whole time. Of course, I think even in that area, there's still 2 or 3 like really, really creepy areas that took me by surprise when I first played this game.
Got a selection of good things on sale, stranger.
Stranger, you see how this guy has he has like a really quotable Cockney voice accent. I've pretty much got all the upgrades. Um, Obviously I haven't gotten all of them. Like this infinite rocket launcher. I mean, you're only really gonna get this if you just want to fuck around. This is it's a rocket launcher with infinite ammo. I mean, come on. And it's basically a one-hit kill.
What are you selling?
But that's the other thing. What are you selling? What are you buying? And for some strange reason,
Is that all, stranger? Is that all? Thank
This
you.
is the only game that the merchant comes out in.
Ah,
I'll buy it at a high
high
price.
price. Ah, I'll buy it at a high price. Ah, I'll buy it at a high price. Thank you.
You see, if you try to sell something without the entire collection of, like, this mask is missing 3 pieces as well, and if you try to
Is
sell
that
it just
all,
like that,
stranger?
he'll just be like, whatever. He doesn't care. This is incomplete. Um, but yeah, strangely enough, this is the only game that the stranger, or the merchant, I'm sorry, this is the only game he actually appears in for some reason. I think at one point during Resident Evil 5's development, because if you've played Resident Evil 5, you know that they also kind of have like a buy and sell system in that game too, but it's kind of just a menu. There's no merchant. There's nobody selling you weapon upgrades or somebody that you can sell treasures to. Um, but it's just a menu. But I think at one point Capcom actually considered including him in that game, like making him kind of a regular. Um, but for whatever reason, they just didn't include him. So which is kind of a shame because I think out of all the characters in this game,
Yes,
I would say he's probably the most memorable. Whoops. Oh fuck. I think there's a snake in here. Yep. You're not getting me this time, dude. I gotta heal myself before I get killed. Been playing it fast and loose. You see, you can do stuff like that. Like you can daze some of these enemies, shoot them in the face. They do kind of like an. Oh my god! I just praised this game for its intelligent AI, and this asshole just walks into his own trap. Like I said, at the time, this was considered very good AI. Obviously, when you compare that to today's standards, it's obviously not as good. But what was I saying? Oh man, I've already. Fuck. Okay, man, let me make some room. Oh, here's another kind of tidbit. The inventory system. Whereas in the older games, you had maybe, I think at the most, maybe you had 8 slots at a time. At the most. God damn. I think in Resident Evil, I can't remember if it's Code Veronica or if it's Resident Evil 2 or 3. I can't remember which game it was, but I think at one point, or it might be all three of them. At one point, you pick up kind of like an item that's like it's like a vest or like an extra bag that makes your inventory system bigger. So instead of 6, you go from 6 to 8. You know, this is what I'm saying. This is where it gets kind of creepy. All these enemies on screen. Luckily, I can take care of these guys. And let's mop them up. So in this game, Resident Evil 4, you start off with a small like supply box, I guess, or an attaché, and as you go along, you buy upgrades from the merchant. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can hold more and more stuff. Um, Like there's no way in hell Leon could have Leon could have carried this much stuff in Resident Evil 2. Obviously, he could only carry 6 things. Um, so there's one thing I wanted to talk about, or that I wanted to continue. Obviously, I've continued to talk about more background information on Resident Evil 4, but I wanted to talk about little bit more history of it. Um, and also a lot of this information I just know off the top of my head. Just a lot, a lot of stuff I've read, a lot of stuff I've watched, a lot of videos, director's commentary, behind the scenes videos, articles that I've read. This is all coming off the top of my head. So if you want to correct me on any of this, go ahead and correct me in the comments. I have no problem with that whatsoever. And I haven't skipped this scene because this is one of my favorite scenes. I remember when I first watched it, I was like, holy shit. Leon, what have you gotten yourself into? But yeah, some of the history, or before I get into that, because there is more history about the development of Resident Evil 4 that I want to get into. But before I do that, I just want to show you guys this little, I don't know if you want to call it an Easter egg, but I guess this is neat, like little trick that you can do here in this area. Let me save my game first. I want to hope that this will be my only death in this playthrough. Hopefully. So we know he's out there somewhere. I think it's called the Lago. This big fucking water sea monster thing. So you know he's out there. Let's see if we can kind of shoot him. Oh! Oh man, I remember the first time I did that. I didn't even know about it. I never looked that up. Um, I think I had already, I thought I had known everything about this game, everything there was to know, and so now I think at that point I was just fucking around. Started shooting into the water because there are some. I skipped it earlier, but there are some fish that you can in an earlier area that you can kill, and then use them. Like there's a fish that swam that way right now that you can kill them and then use them like as a health item. And so I think I had seen some fishes out there, and I wanted to kill them and use them as an inventory item. And so I started shooting into the water, and then that fucking thing jumped out at me, and I'm like, holy shit! Blew my fucking mind at the time. But yeah, this has to be one of my favorite parts of this game. That's why I'm not skipping any of this. This is awesome. I think this is one of the. I think this is probably the best boss battle in the entire game, to be honest with you, because this is the one boss battle that's really different from all the other ones. Because all the other ones, it's basically the same thing. Uh, you know, all the enemies are basically bullet sponges. But in this one, you're hooked up to this guy, and you gotta harpoon his ass. Literally, you have to harpoon his ass. While at the same time, you gotta avoid these fucking things. Oh, I'm gonna hit it. Damn it! And so now you gotta you gotta swim like a madman to get back before that fucking thing eats you. Nope, narrowly missed him. Oh, and then he can also knock you over too. Oh shit. No. But yeah, like I was saying, the rest of the boss battles in this game, they're basically the same. They're bullet sponges. You pump them full of lead, until they die. And this one, you gotta harpoon his ass, quite literally, um, and you gotta avoid him. And then there's moments like these where it gets real quiet, and you gotta find him before he finds you. There he is, and you just gotta harpoon his ass so he doesn't get you. Oh shit! I think I barely just got him. Come on. He's also he's kind of tough because it's really hard to get him, and it takes quite a few harpoon shots to bring him down. Damn, you see? Oh man, if I was Leon, I would be shitting my pants. And I think every time that you fall, he comes at you faster and faster and faster. Oh, here we go again. Where are you, dude? There you are. I also like the pseudo Jaws thing that they put in there. Come on, dude, just die already. Okay, come on, this gotta be yes. And here's another aspect, and you've already seen it a couple times before, but RE4 introduced QuickTime events. And I think this game, along with the original God of War, really popularized QuickTime events. But I think Resident Evil 4 and God of War, I think they did them. I think they were one of the only two games that did them right. Because even Resident Evil, down the road in their later games, they really overused them for basically everything. For every little thing, fucking monster grabs you, quick time event, but not like this. Like here, you just gotta shake them off with your control stick. And that's it. You gotta hit like a series of buttons, or like this. There's this really long cutscene, of Leon trying to find fucking. I won't spoil the later games, but RE4 is one of the two games I think that really um, perfected the quick time event, the QTEs, and a lot of later games really overused them and it kind of made them meaningless a little bit. But before I go, I'm at the 23-minute mark here. I want to keep these videos within 30 to 35 minutes. Um, I don't think I'm gonna skip any more of these cutscenes. I think maybe a few that are stupid. But you really don't miss much. Like I said before, the story here, it's basically in the background. It doesn't really matter. But basically, like I said before, Leon has to go save the president's daughter, who got kidnapped by some cult people in Eastern Europe. And earlier, when he got captured, you got somehow infected, or they infected him, and now it's eating him from the inside. Okay, like these codec Metal Gear Solid conversations, I'm just gonna skip. But yeah, basically, so like at this point, he's infected. The thing that's inside him is starting to take hold. But yeah, so before I end this video, I wanted to talk about a little bit about the history behind Resident Evil 4 because to me it's really it's kind of interesting because Resident Evil 4 was started and scrapped at least 4 or 5 times. Like Capcom started it, they weren't happy with it, and then they scrapped it and started over from scratch again. You know, and that happened at least 3 or 4 or 5 times. And one of the most notable times, I think, okay, at the beginning of the development, my God, I cannot remember the gentleman's name. In the interest of time, I'll look it up and I'll mention it in my next video. But one of the head people at Capcom wanted Resident Evil 4 to be something completely different, or something that would take Resident Evil in a new direction. Because, like I said before, they were getting really stale because they were basically the same game every game. It's basically the same gameplay. You know, there wasn't much different. So they wanted Resident Evil 4 to set itself apart from the rest of the pack. And Leon, excuse me. So they decided to do like this game about demons, and with like a camera angle following you, kind of like if you've ever played God of War, kind of like that type of camera angle was where it's just following behind you. And Leon was gonna have like a sword or like a gun blade type of deal. Um, and it was gonna be like this quick, fast-paced action. Um, and it had to do with hell and with demons and all this type of new shit that was really not Resident Evil at all. Because Resident Evil has always been about, you know, the original title in Japanese is called Biohazard. It's basically about, you know, viruses and the body and stuff like that. There wasn't really anything supernatural about the story. Um, so the more they try to develop that type of game, the more they kind of realized what, like, okay, this isn't really Resident Evil. We basically have made a completely different game, and that completely different game ended up becoming Devil May Cry. uh, so, you know, off of a scrapped Resident Evil 4 game came a completely new intellectual property. And if you pay attention, if you go back and you look at the main character from Devil May Cry, I think his name is Dante, or just Google main character of Devil May Cry, and then Google uh, Leon Kennedy Resident Evil 4 model. They basically look really alike. They have the same like facial expressions. They have the same type of hairstyle. I think Dante from Devil May Cry might have white hair, but other than that, they look almost identical. So that was one scrapped version of Resident Evil 4. I know of another one which was called the Hangman version. And what was supposed to happen was, you know, spoilers for Resident Evil 0 here, but um, or for any other of the Resident Evil games prior to this one, um, every game had a virus that it focused on. You know, the original Resident Evil was the T virus. The virus in 2 was the G virus. The virus in 3, well, 3 was I think 3 was something having to do with, oh man, what was that guy's that monster's name and 3? The guy that kept saying star. It wasn't Tyrant. It was, man, I'm gonna get killed. I can't remember. But okay, so then in Code Veronica, the main virus in that game was the T Veronica virus. Excuse me. And then in Zero, the prequel to the first one, that game focused on the progenitor virus, which was basically like the virus that started it all. And so then, okay, so they shift focus to Resident Evil 4 to be about Leon Kennedy in somewhere in Eastern Europe, and somehow or another, he gets infected by the progenitor virus. And that wouldn't have been the first time a main character got infected by a virus, but what would have been different this time would have been that Leon, because of the virus that he gets in would have gotten in that game, he would have started hallucinating enemies. Like instead of there being actual enemies on the screen that are actually attacking you, Leon would have to deal with supernatural type of hallucinations where enemies pop in and out of his field of view. Um, Dolls would move, inanimate objects would move, the screen would completely change color. You know, you go from exploring this creepy house and it's raining and it's, you know, typical nightmarish stuff, and all of a sudden the screen would turn blue, like everything would turn blue, and then that's how you knew that Leon was having a hallucination. And then they deemed that again too much of a departure from what Resident Evil is actually about. You know, they don't want to deal with hallucinations and stuff like that. Basically, what a lot of people were saying, that Resident Evil, what they call now Resident Evil 3.5, or the Hangman version of 4, they were saying it was too Silent Hill-ish. And Silent Hill, if you've never played that game, is another survival horror game that was developed during the same time as Resident Evil was during the old PlayStation days, and they kind of, you know, had the same type of idea, but whereas Resident Evil kind of focused on, again, like the body, infections, viruses, medical stuff, Silent Hill focused more on the psychological effect and hallucinations and guilt and you know, actual character development. And oh look, this is neat. I like this. If you helped out that dog at the beginning of the game,
It's that dog.
this is really neat. He comes to help you in this battle, and which is really unfortunate. You know, after this battle, you never see him again, which kind of sucked. I kind of wish, I kind of wish he would have joined Leon for the rest of the game instead of Ashley Graham, the president's daughter. That would have been pretty cool. Um, so yeah, so that was that was another like scrapped version of Resident Evil 4. I'm sure there were a couple others, but those are the only two big ones that popped into my head. Um, and then of course they came out with this version, and I'm sure everything worked out. Seeing as this game has been ported to every single console known to man. I've gone a little long in this video. Aw, doggy, where'd you go? Okay, I think I'm gonna... What's in here? I think I'm gonna... I wonder, is there a save point from here on the way to the church? I don't think there is. And I don't think there's one in the church either. But I think I'm pretty close to the end of the chapter, and once I end this chapter, I'll call it a day. But yeah, you see how in this area, you know, storm, thunderstorm out, kind of creepy. Um, you still kind of get that old Resident Evil. Oh, and this shit. You know, your Resident Evil game is never complete until you get zombie dogs. And I hate zombie dogs. I think if that ever existed in real life, I think I mean, regular dogs on their own if one ever attacked me, which I have survived a dog attack when also though. I'm pretty sure that's why I'm kind of terrified of zombie dogs because I have been attacked by one before. But I hate zombie dogs in any game. In any game that they've ever appeared in. I remember as a kid playing, or not a kid, but as a teenager playing this game. Those particular moments uh, really got my heart pumping, made me panic a little bit. God, but I mean, it's so weird how the gameplay for Resident Evil 4, when you really think about it, it's not much different from the gameplay from the previous games. All they really did was change the perspective of the camera, and you just put it behind Leon's shoulder, which was another thing that this game popularized. Turn blue. No, no, shit, green. Because all the other Resident Evil games had puzzles like this, and then you combine it, and voila. But when you really think about it, I mean, this game had tank controls. You move back and forth with the control stick. You move the control stick forward to move forward, and you move it back to move back. You turn, by turning the control sticks to the side, and you run by pressing a button. You aim your gun by holding R1, or yeah, in this case R1, and then you shoot. It's basically the only difference is they move the camera behind Leon's shoulder, and you could actually free aim, which you couldn't do in the previous games. And that's basically all they did. It's basically the same exact game, but what a difference these two little minor changes makes. And this game has become insanely popular.
Ashley,
Don't come!
There she is.
take it easy.
No! Get away!
That's the president's daughter. President's daughter.
Everything's going to be just fine. My name's Leon. I'm under the president's order to rescue you.
What? My father?
That's right. And I have to get you out of here. Now come with me.
Now, a lot of people gave Ashley
Leon.
Graham,
I've
the
succeeded in
character, a lot of
extricating
shit
my
because she
subject.
is kind of annoying.
Good work, Leon. I'll send a chopper over right away.
Where's the extraction point?
There's another trail that you can take to get out of the village. The chopper will pick you up beyond there.
Okay, whatever. Let's skip this. But as you can see, the game basically turns into an escort mission once she joins you, and she leaves you and joins you in various parts of the game. But quite honestly, she almost never becomes a burden. She stays behind you. Whenever you're fighting enemies, she never gets in front of you. And let's say that you want to move on ahead without her getting in, or without her, like if you're gonna go into a horde of enemies and you don't want her getting captured by any enemies, you kind of press a button. I forget which button it is. Gosh, which button was it?
Wait.
There you go. You tell her to wait. But if you just so happen to aim in her direction, bam, she ducks. So that was very, very
Follow
useful.
me.
And then in other areas, there's garbage dumpsters where you could hide her in. One of my one of my favorite things to do here is. Did she do it here?
Hey! What are you looking at? Oh! You pervert! Hey! What are you looking at?
Nothing.
I'll take the girl.
Oh my god, generic villain 275, as I like to call this guy, Lord Sadler.
The master of this fine religious
This is the guy that all the village
What do you
people
want?
keep
To demonstrate
talking
to the
about
whole
every time you
world
kill
our
them. It's so
astounding
funny to me
power, of
because I
course.
speak Spanish,
No longer will the
and
United
it's always like
States
te
think
voy a
they can
matar,
police the world
speaking
forever.
perfect
So
Spanish,
we
and then you kill them, they're like,
kidnapped the
oh,
president's daughter
Lord
in order
Sadler.
to
All of
give
a sudden they
her
speak,
power
they pronounce his
and
name
then
in
send
like a
her
really
back.
good English accent. You see that's where she got infected. They did the same thing to
I
Leon.
think they shot something in my neck.
What did you do to her?
We just planted her a little gift. Oh, there's going to be one hell of a party when she returns home to her loving father.
But yeah, see, you see, this is what I
But
mean
before
when I
that,
say that the story
I thought
never
I might
really matters,
bargain with the president for some
because
donation.
this guy
Believe
Sadler
it or not, it
has
takes
no
quite
connection
a
to
lot
the
of
previous
money
games.
to keep this church up and
He has
running.
no connections in the later
Faith and
games.
money
He's
lead you
basically
nowhere,
only the
Sadler.
villain for this one game.
Oh, I believe I forgot to tell you that we
And he
gave you
never
the
really
same
poses a threat to
gift.
Leon. He never
I
really.
was unconscious.
I mean, there are a couple
Oh,
moments,
I
but he
truly hope
never
you like our
feels
small
threatening.
but special contribution.
You kind of figure out, like, okay, I'm
When
just
the
gonna
eggs
kill this guy at
hatch,
the end
you will
and then
become
run
my
away.
puppets. Involuntarily, you'll do as I say. I'll have total control over your minds. Don't you think this is a revolutionary way to
Gosh,
propagate
this is gonna bother
Sounds
me
more
for
like
the
an
rest of the
alien
day.
invasion,
I
if you
can't
ask
remember
me.
the main villain from Resident Evil 3. Nemesis. There you go. I was about to look it up on
Leon,
my.
what's gonna
I was
happen
about to look it
us?
up on my phone, but
We got into
it
this
just
mess,
dawned on me.
we can
The
get out of it.
main villain from Resident Evil 3 was Nemesis. Um, so there you have it. Um, that's the end of that chapter, and this is the end of this video. I kind of went a little longer than I wanted to, but whatever. It's not a big deal. Want to thank you guys for watching my video. Want to thank Chamber 6 Media. Check them out. Check out the new direction. If you'd be so kind to like and subscribe, and hey, leave me some feedback in the comments. Talk. Throw some shit at me. Whatever. Uh, Talk some shit. Tell me off if I suck. Go ahead and tell me that. I'm a big boy. I can handle it. So I'll catch you guys next time. Hopefully, again, another video tomorrow. Um, I'll try to finish off this video before the end of the week. And so, again, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later.